Random House Audio presents Spousonomics, Using Economics to Master Love, Marriage, and Dirty Dishes, by Paula Schumann and Jenny Anderson. Read for you by Renée Raudman. Introduction. Robert, a handsome 38-year-old San Francisco entrepreneur, wanted to have sex last night. It had been a tough couple of weeks. A major investor in his energy drink company had bailed out. His marketing director had left to join a rival startup. And this afternoon, the supplier of his secret Balinese ingredient threatened to double its cost estimate. Joanne, Robert's wife, was not even remotely in the mood to have sex. She was beat. She had spent the day on conference calls with grouchy New York traders, missed lunch, nearly rear-ended an Escalade racing to pick up her kids from soccer practice, and still had a stack of overdue bills to pay. She wanted to watch 24 reruns, eat a few Malamars, and go to bed. Should Joanne have had sex with Robert? Robert would say yes. She's his wife, for Pete's sake. That's what she signed up for. Is it too much to ask his own wife to agree to fornicate with him on occasion, especially when he's totally strung out and the last time they did it was 3 weeks ago? Doesn't she realize he has needs? Joanne's girlfriends, if asked, would tell her, no way. She doesn't have to put out every time Robert comes knocking. She's not some concubine in his harem. She needs to set boundaries, listen to what her own libido is telling her. Doesn't he realize she's had a rough day, too? But there's a third answer to the question, the economist's answer. The economist would advise Joanne to strip away all the simmering resentments and scorekeeping, the questions about who's more tired and who's less horny, and keep things simple with a basic cost-benefit analysis. Would the marginal cost of having sex with Robert, 9 minutes of sleep, a third Malamar, outweigh the benefits? An orgasm, a happy husband, a peaceful home. There's no right or wrong answer to the question. It depends on a range of factors, from who's answering it to the lunar cycle. But if you're curious how Joanne replied, her answer was no. The marginal cost would not outweigh the benefits. She thus agreed to a quickie after dinner, fell asleep immediately, and left Robert to finish the dishes. Welcome to Spousonomics, the art of using economics to minimize conflict and maximize returns on life's biggest investment, your marriage. Why economics, and not, say, aromatherapy? Many people think of economics as dull, wonky, and irrelevant to their daily lives. Those people are not entirely wrong. It's called the dismal science for a reason. Economists, it is true, have been known to write papers riddled with impenetrable equations, Greek letters and words like autarky, satisficing, and monopsony. In English, self-sufficiency, autarky, settling for what's good enough, satisficing, and a market controlled by one buyer, monopsony. But that's just so no one else can understand what they're saying. At its core, economics is way simpler than all that. It's the study of how people, companies, and societies allocate scarce resources, which happens to be the same puzzle you and your spouse are perpetually trying to solve. How to spend your limited time, energy, money, and libido in ways that keep you smiling and your marriage thriving. Think about it. Here you are, 2 ambitious, opinionated, stressed-out adults trying to live in the same house together, prosper together, maybe raise kids together, and with any luck, take pleasure in spending the rest of your natural-born lives together. This is not easy. For all intents and purposes, your marriage is a business that flourishes in boom times, but at other times feels like running a marathon the morning after a night of too many margaritas. It feels like work, all kinds of work. There's the administrative work that goes into maintaining some semblance of a home, which is a whole lot more complicated when 2 people are in the mix. Someone might consistently pick up after himself, for example, while someone else leaves a trail of apple cores, unmade beds, and sweaty gym clothes. If there are kids, then someone has to make sure those kids have done their homework and are fed, clothed, and in bed by 7. And sometimes that someone is unexpectedly doing it alone because the other person decided to go to happy hour with friends from work, and happy hour turned into dinner, which turned into a late-night beer pong tournament. There's the emotional work that comes with living with someone who's not you, and who therefore has different preferences and styles of communicating. She might prefer to talk for 3 days straight, if that's what it takes to resolve an argument, while you would rather fill your pockets with granite and walk into the ocean. He might like camping, and you might like opera. And since there's only one free weekend to do something fun together, someone either caves or you both stay home and watch QVC. There are the little things, the work of compromising on the perfect house, of calculating where to cut costs when money's tight, of deciding whether it's cruel to name your first child after Aunt Flo, and the big things, the work of being nice to each other after a terrible fight in which mean things were said, of staying up all night worrying if you made the right decision moving to the city for her new job, of letting him discipline the kids, of picking your battles, meeting halfway, letting things slide. Tackling all this work requires dipping into those scarce resources we mentioned earlier, finding the time, mustering the energy, feeling the love, weighing the costs of being flexible and the benefits of standing your ground. This is where a little economic know-how comes in handy. By thinking like an economist, you can have a marriage that not only takes less work, but that feels like a vacation from work. The trick is to A, boost those precious resources, and B, allocate them more intelligently. Do that, and before you know it, you'll be on your way to a better return on your marriage. We believe in economics because it doesn't discriminate between the sexes, between who's right and who's wrong, who communicates better and who talks worse. It doesn't talk down to you or attempt to psychoanalyze. It doesn't care who won the last fight or whose turn it is to control the remote. Instead, it offers dispassionate, logical solutions to what can often seem like thorny, illogical, and highly emotional domestic disputes. In this book, we'll show you how to apply basic economic principles to get the most out of your resources, meaning have more sex, wash fewer dishes, argue more effectively, have more sex, survive the lean years, negotiate more successfully, have more sex, and believe it or not, get your spouse to do things he's never done before, like clean the gutters or listen. Why us? Because we've spent the better part of the last decade toiling away in the trenches of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, where news about economics and business is part of the air we breathe. Because we've covered financial meltdowns, crunched GDP data, pored through SEC filings, deconstructed jargony acronyms like TARP, RMBS, and ABS CDOs, and talked to some of the top dogs in finance and economics, including Tim Geithner, Hank Paulson, Lloyd Blankfein, and Buzz Aldrin. Okay, so Buzz isn't a finance guy per se, but he went to the moon. And because we also, at a certain point, got married. Which means we started grappling with the kinds of issues our married friends had long said they grappled with. But we either didn't understand or smugly thought they should get over it. Like how to find time for each other when you both work 60 hours a week. How to get along when one of you is pregnant and puking and the other one is not. How to divide up the housework and bill paying without leaving blood on the floor. How to compromise when it's all his fault. How to keep being polite to your in-laws now that they're officially your in-laws. How to agree to disagree about what defines too risky when it comes to parenthood and motorcycles. How to keep the flame alive. How to give each other space. How to stop fighting in the car. We
Sample complete. Ready to continue?